Hello, this is Faith of Faith and Books, and I'm going to do a quick summary of the chapter in the Earth User's Guide to Permaculture on trees, forests, and windbreaks. This is chapter 7. I found this chapter pretty interesting. I think trees are interesting. So let's see, what does she say here? She says, saving old forests and planting new ones is still the best way to tie up the surplus atmospheric carbon that causes global warming. Scientists are now saying that when the world's forest area drops below 40% of its original cover, then other systems will break down. So it seems to be a critical point for sustainability of water, soil, and rivers. So just got some really nice diagrams explaining the different parts of trees, its different functions. And then she talks about how forests can really be seen as this cooperative living organism where each of the trees or the other things in the forest are like the cells of the living organism. The trees themselves, or as shrubs, herbs, grasses, and ground covers, are fixed. They carry out special functions, but they need the creatures and the moving elements that aren't fixed in the forest to help them. So they need pollinators, they need help with seed dispersal, they need help with fertilizing and cultivating. So the other things in the forest are mobile and they all work together. I didn't know the difference between a plantation and a forest. A large planting area of monospecific trees, such as pines, is only a plantation, not a forest, because of its limited functions, habitats, and components. So the trees are the cells of the forest. And let's see. To understand the forest, we need to understand how trees work with wind, sun, and water, the components of climate. Trees are superb regulators of air quality, temperature, humidity, and wind. So the wind actually prunes trees and deforms them. And there are some on the edge of a forest, particular trees can survive better. And there's even different types of trees on the windward side versus the leeward side of a forest. The edge of a forest serves as a wind filter, so all the dust and all the other stuff coming into the forest, the trees that survive better there on the edge are good at filtering that sort of thing out. She says here, because trees with small, fine leaves can capture the load and deposit it as nutrients, the edge of a forest can be seen as a nutrient trap. And the edge facing the prevailing wind will have richer soils and hardier plants than the edge on the leeward side of the forest. Forests also deflect winds. So she has this nice diagram there where 40% of the wind goes into the forest and gets filtered, and then 60% gets deflected up, and it shoots up so it's about 20 feet above the forest, and depending on the humidity that's in the forest that's being evaporated, it can cause rain. So it affects the weather. Let's see. It also modifies wind temperature and humidity. And this I thought was really interesting. She said, within 500 meters of the edge, the wind comes to stillness. So it's filtered out all the wind, and now inside it's protected. At this point in the forest, the air is clean because it's been filtered through. It's warmer, it's still, and it's slightly humidified. This is the perfect growing place. It's what we want to design for intensive, productive, protected growing. And like this place, we need to farm in forest clearings. And that made me think of like fairy tales or something. You know, Hansel and Gretel are walking along and they come to a clearing in the forest and there's a little farm there. And so, I mean, they must have figured that out a long time ago, that was a good place to put a farm. But you have to cut down all the trees to make the clearing, I guess. Then she goes on to talk about trees and sun, photosynthesis, that's all going on, and the evaporation and transpiration. And that's really neat because that really does affect the weather. Because leaves are 86% water, they are cooler by day and warmer by night than bare ground, kind of like the effect of a water body. So it's creating its own microclimate. So together, these two things, evaporation and transpiration, are called evapotranspiration. In very dry areas, the evapotranspiration from trees humidifies dry air, and in very damp areas, water captured by leaves dries the air. So it's like, it moderates. Forests moderate the air for us. So working in this way, forests can be seen as natural air conditioners that cleanse the air and regulate extremes of humidity and temperature. So, and as you know from chapter 6, tree roots pull up water and keep the water table low, so preventing the salts which cause soil salinity from concentrating in the top few centimeters of soil. By absorbing sunlight, trees also reduce glare. So they're just incredibly important to the whole Earth global ecosystem. So she goes on to precipitation in trees. Let's see, what did I find out here? Therefore, forest remove. Yeah, so she discusses how it affects rain. Therefore, forest removal in one area can relate directly to drought in another. So we literally change weather by taking down these forests. And of course, trees protect soils. So this was really interesting. So when it rains over a forest, the top part of the canopy is called the interception layer. So when it rains over a forest, the rain is spread as a film of water bound by surface tension over all the leaves of the trees and is caught in stems, barks, cobwebs, flowers, and insect and birds' nests. Some evaporates from these places. The amount caught in the canopy is influenced by the crown's thickness, density of tree canopy, branches, and trunk. For 100% of rain falling, 10 to 25% is caught in the canopy, called the interception layer, without ever reaching the ground. So it's preventing flooding in that way. More is caught in evergreen trees than deciduous. And then the rain that makes it through this top interception level is called the through fall. So that goes through the canopy as mist and droplets. It contains organic salts, dust, plant exudates, insect droppings, and sheddings. It is a nutrient-rich soup and is directed towards the outer leaf canopy, also known as the drip line, below which are the feeding roots. So it gets down to the roots, it drips through and gets down to the roots. Mulch blotter. Before water can reach the roots, however, bark, taproots, fungi, and humus layer of soil act like a great water blotter, soaking up 1 centimeter of rain for every 3 centimeters of depth and holding it for release or use when the soil begins to dry out. Then it's so you've got the water being taken up at the interception level, then you have it dripping through into the ground, and then you have it being blotted by all the stuff that's on the ground under the forest, and then it's filtered through the soil. It gets absorbed into water and air channels, nests, and burrows, absorbed by more soil fungi and bacteria, filtered by humus and mineral particles, and of course taken up by the tree roots. So anyway, it's just incredible how it prevents flooding and how it takes in the water. Filtered water. Once all this has been accomplished, excess water starts very slowly to move to rivers, springs, and the sea. When it does, it is clean. So it's been filtered by the forest. Then the next section is on windbreaks, and this is also really interesting how windbreaks are formed naturally and are really beneficial. And so you have to learn how to design windbreaks. So let's see, what do I want to say about this? Every site has a predictable wind pattern. Sometimes you can learn about it from weather records. In other cases, you will need to observe how tree shapes are deformed, wind pruned, and the amount of wear on buildings. Each windbreak design is site specific. Design windbreaks as part of the 35% of permanent tree cover needed for each site. So when you don't have windbreaks, what happens? A chill factor is created. The result is that on windy sites, climate will actually be cooler than the temperature figures show. Plant growth is retarded and both height and yield decrease, while solar devices and insulation work less efficiently on buildings. So the ecological functions of windbreaks are to serve as sun traps, increase wind velocity or cooling, decrease evaporation from water or land, control erosion, provide shelter belts for stock, act as dust filters, form nutrient traps for wind and water. So she's got these graphs where she shows, can you see that? She shows what happens when you just have the wind coming in, you don't have a windbreak versus when you do have the windbreak. I don't know if you can see that. And it's all better when you have a windbreak. So let's see, she goes through, you have to have some movement through your windbreak. You don't want it to be like a rock in a stream where it forms these eddies, and the eddies, the water is even going faster and rougher. You don't want that. You don't want to create wind tunnels that will be more destructive. So then she goes on to how you actually design a windbreak, and I don't really understand it enough. I think I'd have to go out and really measure winds and look at things and stuff. But she does say you can even have small windbreaks, like just having a short hedge will create a tiny microclimate, like in your garden. So she says, although you may not need to design and plant windbreaks for large areas, windbreaks are necessary in most gardens, although they need not be permanent. For example, Jerusalem artichokes make an excellent summer windbreak or sun trap in cool climates. They can collect in direct sun to ripen tomatoes. Windbreaks can be small hedges of herbs, only knee-high in some cases. For example, lavender could be used for this purpose in a cool climate. Near the coast, where wind is abrasive, and I don't know, how do you say that word? Disciccating? I've heard it before. Disciccating, and saline. Small windbreaks can be sufficient to raise a summer or winter crop inside them. So, and then she's got all these charts about how to redirect wind in different situations. So, hot, dry landscapes, tropical or cyclone, coastal areas. So that's it. So that's 13 minutes still. Wow, I thought I was going to make it really short. I thought that was really interesting. And now I'm going to try and read 2 chapters next. Chapter 8, our plant and seed heritage. And then what was the next thing? That's chapter 8. Where's chapter 9? Chapter 8 is short. And then chapter 9 is actually introducing another section called Applying Permaculture, and it's just on reading your land, and it's sort of an introduction to, the real design methods that she's going to talk about for the rest of the book. So anyway, that's coming up. So anyway, thanks. If you listen this far, you are intrepid. And I guess I'll talk to you later. Bye.